Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Kirsty, and if you've never seen me before, I am so happy that you stumbled across this video, and I would love it if you subscribed. I'm going to be here for you every single week with new true crime content, sometimes twice a week if I feel like I can cope with that level of content. But I'm so excited. I've honestly not posted on this channel in years and I'm just so excited to be back. So I'm going to jump straight into it. I'm not going to go on too much because I've got a lot to say. The case that I'm coming back with has absolutely dominated the later half of last year. It was one of the biggest cases in France, and when you hear the finer details of it, it just makes it a billion times worse. I think even just reading the headlines of it last year, I was shocked at what I was reading, but then the more I looked into it, the more I could not believe what this woman went through and who put her through it. So I'm going to be talking about the absolute warrior of a woman that is Gisele Pelicot. An online chat room on a now closed down website called A Son In Sue, which translates in English to Without Her Knowing, was how French man Dominique Pelicot recruited 72 men to assault his victim in a truly shocking and horrifying case of chemical submission. If you, like me, had never really heard of the term chemical submission, it is the use of chemical substances to manipulate the will of a person, producing incapacity or unconsciousness that facilitates criminal actions. Essentially, a victim is drugged without their knowledge. While the victim is in a state of unconsciousness, the perpetrator will use this time to commit horrific acts. Well, at the end of 2024, I'd been following it for a little while, but one of France's biggest court cases finally concluded and over 50 sentences were handed down. And the woman at the centre of it all might just be one of the strongest women you will ever hear about, Gisele Pelicot. She waived all right to anonymity so that she could face all of the men accused, including her husband, Dominique Pelicot. He was the mastermind behind it all. Her husband of over 50 years. Gisele Pelicot was born on the 7th of December 1952 in West Germany. Her father was a French soldier, so they moved to France when she was 5, and around 18 years later she met her future husband, Dominique. They married in 1973 and settled down in a Paris suburb where they had 3 children together. Gisele worked in administration and Dominique worked as an electrician and also as an estate agent. He had tried multiple times over the years to set up a few different businesses, but they never ended up panning out. Things never really worked out, so it was just kind of one of those things he wrote off, and he ended up just working these solid jobs instead. They were happily married for years, and it was around the mid-80s when Gisele actually entered into an affair with a colleague of hers at work, and this affair lasted for about 3 years. When everything came out and Dominique found out about it, they actually separated, and Dominique ended up moving in with another woman and was, I believe, in a relationship with another woman for a little while. And then ultimately things didn't work out with that woman, and he ended up getting back together with Gisele, and then they continued their marriage. And this was in the 80s, they were still together. So they continued to be married for a very, very long time. They both retired in 2013 and they rented an absolutely beautiful house in southeastern France, and it had gorgeous gardens, it had a lovely swimming pool. It was the kind of house that was perfect for when their children and their grandchildren came over, because they used to visit in the summer. It was just a gorgeous place for them all to go, especially with the swimming pool. That is just the dream. In around 2011, Gisele's children, who were all adults at this time, started noticing little things about Gisele that were different. Things about their mum that hadn't been that way before. Like her memory started to get really bad, and she would sometimes just be incoherent. Like, you'd be in the middle of a conversation with her and she'd kind of say something completely random, or she'd forget parts of conversations or forget they'd had that conversation and tell somebody the same thing again. She was tired, she was dramatically losing a lot of weight, and she already was quite a small lady. And she also started losing her hair, and all of these traits can be things that are linked to something along the lines of Alzheimer's. The kids, being adults now at this point, would all talk to each other and say, I spoke to mum and she said this, it was weird, have you noticed it? What have you seen recently? Have you said anything? Like, discussing it amongst themselves, but not wanting to go directly to their mum. But they used to go to Dominique, to their dad, and say, have you noticed anything strange about mum? What do you think's going on? Do you think she's okay? And he would always just say, she's absolutely fine. She's getting older, she's tired, but you know your mum, she's always on the go, she never stops, she never takes a rest, so she's just tired. She eventually goes to see a neurologist after her family had kind of expressed these concerns for long enough. She goes to see somebody and they do a load of tests, but every single test comes back as she is completely fine. There's nothing wrong with her brain. She's just getting older. The doctors told her she just needs to relax in her retirement. She just needs to enjoy and step back and take the time to chill out. Every now and again, something else would crop up and she'd make another doctor's appointment and Dominique would go with her, and they were always kind of hoping that someone would flag up something and say, this test has come back and maybe you've got this. But nothing ever came up. It was always just a case of, you're just getting tired, you need to chill. But as the years go on, she's spending more and more time doing all of this relaxing that the doctors have told her to. She's in her 60s, but her condition is just getting worse. Rather than losing more hair than normal, she's literally losing chunks of hair at a time. Her weight is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and she is just a tiny dot at this point. She even stopped driving. She chose to stop driving herself because she didn't want to get into a car accident, hurt herself, hurt her family, hurt her husband, or hurt anybody else by involving anybody else in a collision. So she literally chose to stop driving because she felt like something was seriously not right with her. As well as these neurological issues, she was also suffering quite a lot with gynecological issues. She would go to appointments and be checked out, and nothing really ever came from this. I don't know how nothing was brought up at these points and at these appointments specifically, but nothing ever raised a red flag, which I find kind of shocking. Anyway, even at these appointments, she was just told, take it easy, take some painkillers, you'll be fine. One day, one of the kids had come to visit, one of her adult children, and they were there at the table having dinner and things together when his mum just had a really blank stare, and he was worried, he was really concerned about it, and it got so bad to the point where Giselle, she just wasn't like there. And Dominique had to literally pick her up and carry her to bed, and her son is just there like, what is going on with mum? This isn't normal. This is not normal behaviour. There is something not right, but just none of them could put their finger on it. Fast forward a little bit. Everything is going on just as usual. Everything is exactly the same as it has been. It's a totally normal day when Giselle is at home on her own and Dominique comes home and he drops an absolute bomb on her. He tells her that he has been at the supermarket and he got into trouble with the police for taking upskirt photos of some young girls. Yep. He was visibly upset the whole time he was telling Giselle about this. He was saying, this is a complete misunderstanding. It's not what you think. It's not what the police think. It's been totally blown out of proportion. Somebody's got the wrong end of the stick. This is not me. This is not the kind of thing that I would ever do. Giselle obviously listened to him and listened to everything he was saying, and she believed him. Dominique has to go to the police station. He's got to go through some paperwork and things like that, and Giselle goes with him because he would always go with her to her appointments, and she just thought he needs her support, so she went with him. He wasn't acting like he was stressed out or wasn't acting as though he was anxious or upset or anything. He was very calm, as though he was just going in to kind of settle a mistake, basically. They are just a lovely, supportive husband and wife looking after each other, being there for one another. So Giselle is sat in the waiting room waiting for her husband to finish doing what he needs to do when she is asked to go into one of the interrogation rooms. So Giselle goes into the interrogation room, she sits down, and an officer comes in and just starts chatting with her, asking her questions about her husband, what he's like, and if they've always got on well, how she would describe him. But then it starts to get a little bit more specific, asking things like, do you often have friends over for dinner or for lunch? Then the weird questions just keep going. Do you nap a lot? Do you sleep well on a night? And how well do you feel when you wake up in a morning? Are you swingers? And at this point, Giselle is like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, firstly, and what the hell are you asking me this for? So the officer that is in the room with her takes out a massive file and he puts it down and he says that what is in this file is shocking and she needs to kind of prepare herself for what she's going to see. Giselle obviously has no idea what is going to come out in this file. She is thinking it's probably going to be CCTV footage of Dominique at the supermarket taking these photos of these girls, like the upskirt pictures. She's thinking she's going to be upset because she's going to find out that her husband was lying about that. But in reality, it is so much worse than she could have imagined. The first image that she is shown is of herself and she's laid down in her own bed on her stomach. She is completely nude and there is a man, a stranger, standing behind her in the picture, and this is a man that she has never ever seen before. It's not her husband. The first image that she is shown is of herself and she is laid in her own bed. She's laid on her stomach and she is completely nude, and behind her in the image is a man, a stranger, a man that she has never seen before in her life, and he is in her bedroom, stood behind her, while she is seemingly asleep. Then she's shown another image, and it's basically the exact same setup with her being laid how she was, but there's a different man behind her, a different stranger. The weird thing is that she's in her own bedroom. She is in her own bedroom, in her own familiar surrounding, but in each image, there is a man that she has never seen before there with her in the same room, and she has got no recollection of it. She does not understand how these pictures have even been taken. It makes no sense. When the police had taken Dominique's phone and all of his devices from him after the upskirt photo debacle in the supermarket, they found something so much more sinister than they ever thought they would. They came across a USB that had a folder in it called Abuses that had around 20,000 photos and videos in it. Within this folder were subfolders, about 80 of them, and they were all named with a man's name and a sexual act after it. And all of these folders ranged in date from 2011 to 2020. For almost 10 years, Dominique had been serving Giselle a combination of substances, including one called Temesta, which is like an anti-anxiety drug, but it acts as a sedative. Once he had given this to Giselle and she had become unconscious, he would then invite men, strange men from the internet, to come into his home to SA his wife. He used the chat room without her knowing the name of it. That has since been shut down because it was found to have a lot of illegal activity going on. I think when they found all of this stuff had been happening on there, deep dives were done of it and there was just a lot of seedy activity going on. So the entire website was shut down, thank God. But on this chat room, people would talk about like their fantasies and about their partners or what they wanted to do with people. And it was basically where women predominantly didn't know what was happening to them. So without her knowing, literally disgusting. Well, Dominique would advertise his unconscious wife on this chat room and ask people if they wanted to come into his house and R-word her. Not only this, he had rules. He had a list of rules that he would post and that the men had to follow. I will read them out because you will not believe the lengths that this man went to keep all of this a secret. He is the worst. Don't wear aftershave or smell like cigarettes. Park the car away from the house. Take clothes off near the door to avoid accidentally leaving clothes in the bedroom. Must have clipped nails. Wash the hands in warm water to give them warm hands. Phone needs to be left in the car. All of these rules were designed specifically to not wake up Giselle. The aftershave so that it didn't kind of trigger her senses and make her come round. The phone not being allowed in the bedroom in case it rings and it jump starts her and she wakes up. Sharp nails in case she gets a scratch or something like that doesn't look familiar. The levels of thought that this man put into these assaults is disgusting. disgusting. Sick. He would post photos and videos on the chat room of Giselle in lingerie. Obviously she is unconscious during this, and he would also say that he'd post videos of men essaying her to help arouse the men online in case they're unsure whether or not they want to go through with it. So if you've got people online that are like, oh, I don't know if this sounds like a good idea, and he's like, oh, don't worry, here's a video of another man doing this exact same thing, like, it's fine. Why are you literally trying to persuade people? One thing that really got to me about this case, and it actually really got to his daughter as well, his and Giselle's daughter, is the fact that all of this was just been done for his own pleasure. When I first read about it, and I know that this is not an excuse, or it wouldn't make it any better if this was the case, but I thought to myself, he must be doing it to make money. He must owe somebody a lot of money. He must be in a lot of debt. He must be stressing about something. He's trying to kind of like get himself out of it, and the only thing he can think of is to do something as horrendous as this. But that isn't even the case. He asked for nothing. No money. He didn't ask for anything. It's like, why are you doing this? All he wanted was to be able to record the assault. He would just put his camera in the room and he'd be in there and just watch. Some of these assaults would last up to 6 hours. And he would record the whole thing, he would save it, he would put it in his little USB in his folder, name it after the name of the man and the sexual act that he was doing to his own wife, and then it would be stored there forever. So back to the interrogation room, and Giselle has just been told basically all of this. She is shocked, she is disgusted, she cannot believe what her husband has been doing to her for the past almost 10 years. And now she has the job of telling her kids what has been going on, and that is just a job that no woman should ever have to do. Their daughter Caroline was at work at this time, but Giselle had left a voicemail just saying, hi, it's me, it's urgent, it's about your dad, please ring me back. So Caroline's partner is at home and hears this voicemail and he's like, oh no, like something must be going on, and he's panicking a little bit. Everybody around this time was thinking COVID. COVID was like the only thing that was going on, and an elderly person, especially, well, an older person, anything that's like an urgent call about an elderly relative, you kind of automatically jump to, I hope they've not got COVID, maybe they're in hospital, blah, blah, blah. But in the meantime of him not really knowing what to do and Caroline still being at work, he gets another phone call and another voicemail is left, but this time it's by the police. So now he is really panicking. He doesn't know what is going on. So he rings Giselle and says, obviously, Caroline's at work. Is everything okay? What is going on with Dominique? And she just says, I need to tell you both together. Please, will you just, as soon as she finishes work and gets home, please just give me a ring straight away. As soon as Caroline steps through the door, she can tell that something isn't right. She can tell by the look on her husband's face that something is going on. And basically in that exact moment, the phone rings and it is Giselle. Caroline said that during that phone call, and her mum told her what her dad had been doing and everything kind of just came out. She said that she remembers just staring blankly at the clock and it read 8:25 p.m. and she just says that that's like the last time that she remembers everything being normal, because after that, everything in her world completely flipped upside down. So after learning about all of this, Caroline and her brothers go immediately to Giselle's side and they want to be there for her. So they all make the trip to go and be with their mum. They go to the police station while they're there with Giselle, and the officers go through everything with the kids and they tell them what's been going on and what he was posting online and just kind of how everything was progressing and what was going to be happening with Dominique kind of police-wise. And they also were told that at this point 53 men had been identified from the videos. Before they left the station that day, Caroline asked the police officers working whether or not Dominique had shown any kind of remorse for what he'd done, and she was told, and I quote, "Thanked the police for taking the weight off his shoulders." This man. Infuriating. Obviously, Dominique is in police custody during this time, so Giselle and the kids go back to the family home just to get some stuff. They're not going to be staying there. Giselle does not want to be there, quite clearly, like obviously she wouldn't want to be there. So they take the trip to the house, go get some stuff, and while they're there, Caroline gets a phone call from the police station and they ask her to come back in, and she immediately has like a gut feeling that this isn't going to be good. When she arrives at the station, she's taken into an interrogation room and there are a few screens in there and she's shown some images and she's just asked to identify herself if she can. The first few images that she's shown is of a woman. She's in a bed, her bum is exposed, and there's different bedrooms in these images and different sets of underwear, but it's always the same dark-haired woman. But Caroline's relieved. She's like, thank God, like, that's not me. She felt a wave of relief and thought, thank God, because that would have been the cherry on top of the horrific cake that we have been dealing with. But the officer looks uncomfortable and he asks her to take another look and to pay close attention to the little mark, like the little beauty mark or like mole or freckle that she's got on her cheek. She said in that moment her ears started ringing, she couldn't focus on anything. She might not have recognised the pyjamas or the underwear or the bedrooms some of the time, but she could not unsee herself from those images once she'd seen it was her. She completely breaks down, which is understandable, and she gets her brother to come in with her and to sit with her and just to console her. And between them, they managed to work out that it looks as though these were taken in around 2011. It also comes out around this time that Dominique had been taking pictures of his daughters-in-law as well. More in the style of like Peeping Tom, like he'd see one of them in the bathroom and he'd just like snap a picture rather than kind of these weird setup images, because the ones of Caroline were kind of similar to the ones of Giselle. She had no idea they were taken. It's as though she wasn't conscious at the time, whereas the ones of the daughters-in-law were images where they were kind of standing up, walking around, and it was like a quick shot taken through a door or a window. Makes it even more disgusting that one of these daughters-in-law was pregnant with Dominique's grandchild at the time he was taking pictures. It literally just keeps getting worse. As I mentioned in the beginning, the trial for this case ended in December 2024, and Giselle was there throughout the entire trial so that she could look those men in the face and hear what they had to say. 51 men took the stand, including Dominique, and these were just the ones that were able to be identified from the video recordings. Some of the things that they said while they were on the stand were absolutely wild, including some of them saying that they didn't even realise that Giselle was unconscious. What were they trying to say they thought was happening there? I made a note of what a couple of the defendants said because I just could not believe the audacity of some of these men. One defendant, 44-year-old Lionel, visited the Pelicot house on the 2nd of December 2018. He was instructed to take his clothes off in the living room and was then guided to the bedroom where a sleeping, naked Giselle was laid. This man is a father of 3. He started talking with Dominique on the Without Her Knowing website, and Dominique was mentioning things like sleeping pills and stuff, and Lionel claimed that he just thought it was all a bit of a game. He didn't realise it was like serious and that she would be unconscious. He never really thought. He didn't really ask too much about it. So he apparently doesn't really know that she's unconscious, even though he leaves his clothes out of the room and he goes into the room, and for 30 minutes he R-words Giselle while Dominique whispers from the corner of the room with his camera so as to not wake her up, but he's whispering instructions to Lionel so that he remembers the rules and that he does everything properly. At one point, Giselle moved a little bit and Dominique whispers to him that he has to get out of the room, so Lionel leaves quickly, and then it's at that point he apparently thinks to himself like, oh, that's weird. Maybe she doesn't know what's going on. Like, duh. This one is a real kicker. One man was invited to visit multiple times and he was always instructed by Dominique not to wear a condom, despite being HIV positive. Why? I'm sorry. This man. There was another man called Jax. He was 74 years old, divorced, father of 2, and his story is very, very similar to Lionel's. While he was there, Giselle didn't actually react to anything. She was quite clearly unconscious, but she did move slightly. So the same thing happened where Dominique kind of instructs him quietly to get out of the room, and he comes back out a little while later and he says to Jax, you know, we're all good to go, you can come back in. But Jax at that point was like, nah, I'm good, I don't want to go back in. So he claims that he was gonna he was going to report it to the police because he thought it was a bit weird. But then, you know, he got home and he went to bed that night and went to sleep. And then the next day he got up and he got ready for work and he got to work. And then the days just kind of carried on and he just never ended up reporting it because, you know, life's busy and, you know, sometimes you just forget to report the really important crimes that you've quite clearly been involved in. These men are from so many different backgrounds. There are men with really respectable jobs. There are so many people out there that are just wrong to the core and you just would not expect it. Firefighters, IT workers, prison guards, nurses, journalists, soldiers, truck drivers. The list is endless. One of these men lived round the corner. Giselle recognised him. He was basically a neighbour. And little did she know, he had been in her bedroom with her while she was unconscious and he had done unspeakable things to her. The youngest man to stand trial in December was 22 years old and he visited twice, and one of those times it was whilst I can't even believe it. It was whilst his baby daughter was being born. I can't even believe I'm saying those words. Whilst his baby daughter was being born, he was R-wording somebody's grandmother while she was unconscious. You can't even make it up. Some of these men, obviously they had their devices checked over by the police as well. A lot of them actually were found to have child CP on their devices, which I don't find that shocking because people who are capable of doing horrendous crimes like this are capable of doing other horrendous crimes too. And some of these men had actually visited the Pelicot house up to 6 times. So you're telling me that you did not realise she was unconscious and you visited up to 6 times. Sorry, that's bollocks. I can't believe some of them tried to get away with saying that they thought it was consensual and they thought it was a game, and it was a game that the couple liked to play together and she would just pretend to be asleep the entire time. Some of them actually just tried saying that they didn't think that there was any drugging involved. They had no idea. It's very, very contradictory though. When you think about all of the things that Dominique would say during these videos, you would hear him whisper instructions, and it's just quite clear that all of that was being done so as to not disturb Giselle and to kind of make her wake up out of this unconscious state. It's obvious that that was the case, and the rules as well. Why else would you not be able to smell like cigarette smoke or have aftershave on or to park your car around the corner or take your clothes off somewhere else so that they don't accidentally end up getting left in the bedroom? Like, every single little thing adds up, and it is quite clear that she had no idea what was going on. So you must be thinking to yourself, like, why would Dominique do all of this to his wife? He must hate her. He must absolutely hate her to put her through something so horrific. Well, it is quite the opposite. He admits that he is a R-worder because he used to do the exact same thing to her as well. He used to give her the cocktail of drugs and assault her while she was unconscious. So he admits he was an R-worder, and he speaks really highly of her, and he says that he's always loved her. She's the best woman out there and she didn't deserve any of it. He said, and I quote, "I loved her well for 40 years and loved her badly for 10 years. I ruined everything. I lost everything. I should never have done that." Although Dominique admitted to everything, he did say that he wasn't like born an absolute monster, and he thinks that the reason he ended up kind of going that way was because he suffered sexual abuse when he was a child. Obviously that doesn't excuse anything, but this is just what he said is kind of his thoughts behind why he did it. When he was 9 years old, he was in hospital for a head injury when he was R-worded by a nurse working. And he also recalled a time when he was 14 years old and he was forced to watch and take part in a group R-wording of an innocent woman. I don't know what was going on in his childhood, but it doesn't sound like the greatest. The affair that Giselle had early on in the marriage was also brought up and kind of to question her integrity during the trial. But Dominique even spoke out on that and said that they were happily married after that. It was nothing to do with that it wasn't even a thought or a factor in any kind of way, and that she was completely and 100% the only victim in any of this. He said that the only thing he can kind of think of, despite having like the past, which maybe planted a seed of darkness in his brain, the only thing that triggered him to even think to do anything like this was because he wanted her to start wearing more lingerie, and he also wanted to get into swinging, and she didn't want to. She was happy with the way that things were. So instead of, you know, being a normal husband and not drugging his wife, he started crushing up sleeping pills and putting them into her food and her drinks so that he could assault her on a night. And then from some reason, it developed from there into the horrificness of this entire case. During the trial, Dominique was asked if there was any way that Gisèle could have consented to this at any time, and he said, and I quote, "Not at all. It was always against her knowledge." So the trial of all 51 of these men ended in December 2024. Dominique, the husband and the man who solicited dozens of men to assault Gisèle while she was unconscious, received the maximum sentence of 20 years for aggravated rape. 48 of the men were also found guilty of aggravated R-word, and 2 of them were also found guilty of sexual assault. Dominique's sentencing was obviously the biggest because he was the ringleader behind all of this, and then the sentences kind of trickled down in just like as it went down. So there was some people getting 15 years, some 13 years, even right down to some of them getting a 5-year suspended sentence. I can't even believe somebody would get a suspended sentence for crimes like this. After the verdicts were read out, Gisèle spoke outside the courtroom and she said, "I'm thinking of all the unrecognised victims of stories which often unfold in the shadows. I want you to know that we share the same fight." The now 72-year-old also said that she never regretted not keeping her anonymity. She's glad that she put herself out there so that people could see her and that she could speak to people who had been in similar situations, and she said that all the messages of support that she got really helped her stay strong throughout the entire case. Whoa, that was a heavy one. I honestly cannot believe the audacity of the men for saying that they thought she was pretending. For Dominique going to these lengths, it just absolutely baffles me. It really does make you think that you don't truly know anybody. You could be married to someone for 50 years and they could turn around and do something like that to you and still claim that you are like the love of their life and you are amazing, but do something like that. It absolutely baffles me. Anyway, I will be back with another video very soon. If you want to leave any case suggestions in the comments, you are more than welcome to. I love seeing what people want to actually hear about. So I will see you very, very soon. Bye.